Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Noah here breaking down the three-game NFL slate on Draftkings and Yahoo for Thanksgiving Day. We're going to go position by position. I'll hit on some of my favorite plays that I like for this three-game slate. We will talk about Draftkings and we'll talk about some Yahoo plays as well. One thing to note, I am recording this video on Tuesday afternoon. As I'm recording this on Tuesday afternoon, there are some injuries we're going to need to watch heading into Thursday. Kind of at each position, we got some injuries at the quarterback position we're going to need to watch. Matthew Stafford is doubtful. Jeff Driscoll is questionable. At the running back position, Devontae Freeman, who hasn't played the last few games, he's questionable heading into Thursday. Julio Jones got injured on last Sunday's game, and he is questionable heading into Thursday, so that's a big one to watch. Even at the tight end position, we got to watch the status of Austin Hooper, who has missed the last few games. He's listed as questionable heading into Thursday. So those are going to be some big injuries we need to watch. I'll touch on them as we go through each position. Like I said, we'll talk about Draftkings and Yahoo. Just a few things before we do get started, guys. As always, I would appreciate it if you would drop a like down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. Click that notification bell so that way you get notified every time I upload. You can also follow me on Twitter. Link is down in the description at DFS by Noah. I am very active over on Twitter. Would appreciate it if you guys would give me a follow over there. But let's go ahead and run through this three-game slate. Even though it's a three-gamer, I still love playing these Thanksgiving Day slates. Like this Thanksgiving Day NFL slate, the Christmas Day NBA slate, even though they're really small, I still like to play them. It gives you something to do while you're hanging out with the family, eating some good food. You get to watch some football. You can track your scores on your phone. Usually when we're eating at the dinner table, I'll kind of have my phone under the table, tracking my scores. I do that every year. Girlfriend's yelling at me to get off my phone because I be on it too much during Thanksgiving. But it's just what I do. I love playing DFS, love watching football, sweating the game. So we'll go through each position, talk about some of my favorite plays. Starting off at quarterback, pricing is something we're going to have to talk about varying on sites. Like on Draftkings and Yahoo, the pricing is just totally different at each position. So I will touch on how I like the plays based on pricing. Looking at Draftkings based on their quarterback pricing, I think Drew Brees is easily the top option on Draftkings. This is for sure going to be the game that's the most popular to target, this Saints and Falcons game. If we do just look at game totals for this Thursday slate, between the Bears and the Lions, you got a 38.5 total, which is the lowest on the slate by a pretty wide margin. And then in that 4:30 game between the Bills and the Cowboys, you have a 45.5 total. And then in the late night game between the Saints and the Falcons, you have a 48.5 total. So the two later games, the Bills, Cowboys, the Saints, Falcons, those are for sure going to be the two most popular games. I don't think we're going to see a lot of high ownership in this first game. You might see some guys flock to like some cheap plays because there are some cheap plays in that game to target. But that's for sure going to be the least appealing game. The quarterbacks in that game are going to be hard for me to have a ton of confidence in. I mean, Matthew Stafford's unlikely to play. Jeff Driscoll is questionable, so that's going to be a big one to watch. I mean, just a few games that Jeff Driscoll has started, he's actually not been that bad for fantasy, putting up 19, 27, and 15 Draftkings points. He did face the Bears in Chicago in Week 10 and had 19 DK points in that game. Now he gets them at home, assuming he plays. I'm assuming he plays, even though he was limited on Monday. I'm going into this slate assuming he plays. He's definitely not my favorite quarterback at 5,500. Same with Trubisky at 5,300. I mean, if I'm going to go for a value quarterback, like I'll just play Trubisky, who is the cheapest available quarterback on DK. 5,300 against the Lions. I would say this is a pretty easy matchup for Trubisky. I mean, he did put up 19 Draftkings points, nearly 20 DK points against the Lions in Week 10. Trubisky's obviously been very inconsistent this season, but he was pretty good in that game against the Giants last week. He did throw for 278 yards and a passing touchdown. He did also have a rushing touchdown as well. If I can, I'm going to try and get up to the two quarterbacks in the late night game, either Brees or Ryan. Drew Brees is definitely my favorite quarterback on this slate, and he's the guy that I want to try and jam in the most. I mean, it's just such a good matchup for Drew Brees. He's going to be my highest exposed quarterback on both sites. If we go over to Yahoo, he is really, really cheap over there, and I think looking at quarterback pricing on Yahoo, it really differs, or it's like different from DraftKings pricing. So on Yahoo, your most expensive quarterback is actually Dak Prescott at $35, and then you have Brees and Ryan both at $31. Josh Allen at 28, Jeff Driscoll at 24, and then Trubisky at 23. So I think Brees and Ryan really stand out on Yahoo, and just choosing between the two of those guys, Drew Brees is definitely my favorite. Factoring in that they're the same salary, I would much rather have Drew Brees And even though there's only a $400 difference on DraftKings, I still would rather have Drew Brees over Matt Ryan. It's just such a good matchup. This Falcons defense is not good. They've been improving lately, but we saw what Jameis Winston did to them last week. This is a team you want to attack through the air. They have one of the worst secondaries in the league. Drew Brees was not that great when they've played in Week 10. I do expect a big bounce-back game from him. Playing indoors in the Dome, that's where Drew Brees always plays well. This game will be played in indoors. It has the highest total on the slate. Drew Brees is by far the best quarterback on the slate. It's just a matter of can you fit him in, especially like if you want to pay up for Kamara, Elliott, Michael Thomas. I mean, you're probably going to have to punt off quarterback and play like Trubisky or Driscoll if you want to get all three of those stud running backs and receivers in. But I like paying up for Drew Brees. I think he's the best quarterback on the slate. Matt Ryan against the Saints. I mean, Matt Ryan's obviously in play. I do usually play a few lineups. I don't play just one lineup on the Thanksgiving Day slate. I'll probably have like a couple lineups on each site. So I'll definitely have exposure to Matt Ryan, but I don't think he's going to be one of my highest exposed quarterbacks. I do prefer to get to Drew Brees if I can. Josh Allen obviously has a ton of upside. I have a feeling Josh Allen's going to be pretty low owned on this slate since Matt Ryan's just a little bit more, and people will probably just flock to Matt Ryan given that game environment, how high that total is in that game. But Josh Allen is a very high upside QB. I mean, this guy has a ton of rushing upside. You can play him by himself. You don't have to stack him with the receiver, which makes him very viable. I mean, he's just going to do what he does. He's going to throw the ball probably 25 to 30 times, probably get you 200 to 250 passing yards. He's going to get anywhere from 30 to 50 rushing yards. He has the potential to get some rushing touchdowns. We've seen when they get in the goal line or near the goal line, they will run the ball in with Josh Allen. So he has a lot of upside. I do like him quite a bit. And honestly, factoring in ownership, I might honestly play him over Matt Ryan since I have a feeling Matt Ryan will be pretty popular. I mean, Matt Ryan's just dusted me every time I played this dude. I played him, I believe, 3 times this year in my main lineup. And I played him last week in my main lineup against Tampa Bay. He had 9 DraftKings points in that game. Week 7 against the Rams, I played him in my main lineup that week, and he had 4 DK points. I'm sure if I don't get much exposure to him, he's probably going to go nuts this week. But I feel like you just get more upside from guys like Josh Allen, getting up to Drew Brees, even dropping down to Dak Prescott at 5,700. The Bills are for sure a team you want to run on. I mean, the way you beat the Bills is through the ground game, but Dak Prescott has just been so good this season. He was pretty rough in that game against New England, but that was just a really bad game for him. I mean, playing in New England, it was really bad weather. I didn't expect Dak Prescott to have that great of a game. Now he gets to go back home for 5,700. Dak's firmly in play, and just ranking the quarterbacks on this slate, I'd probably go, factoring in ownership and projection, I'd probably go Drew Brees number 1, Allen number 2, Prescott 3, Ryan 4, Trubisky 5, and then Jeff Driscoll 6. That's probably how I would rank the quarterbacks on DraftKings. Now on Yahoo, factoring in their salaries, I would for sure go Drew Brees number 1 by a pretty wide margin. Then I'd go Allen 2, Ryan 3. I don't see myself playing a lot of Dak Prescott on Yahoo. Since he's the most expensive quarterback at $35, it's going to be hard for me to prioritize him. So he's probably going to be like my last ranked quarterback. I don't see myself really going much to like Trubisky or Jeff Driscoll either. I don't think you really need to go that cheap. So I'm probably going to be playing a lot of Brees, Ryan, and Allen over on Yahoo because I think those are the 3 guys that stand out to me the most given their pricing. Let's go ahead and move on to running back now and talk about the running back position. So obviously the clear plays here that stand out above the rest are Alvin Kamara and Ezekiel Elliott. I really like this spot for Ezekiel Elliott. He's the first guy that I want to talk about. So I mentioned it earlier, the way you beat this Bills team is through the ground. They have had a pretty rough run defense lately. I mean, they're a pretty easy team to run on. Zeke, we know, is going to get fed the ball a ton. He's going to get more volume than Kamara, just in terms of total touches. Last week against New England in a game where he wasn't that efficient, I mean, he still got 21 carries, 86 yards. He did get 4 catches for 40 yards as well, had 16 DraftKings points in that game. That was pretty much a floor game from Ezekiel Elliott. When you get those games where he goes for like 80 yards, or like he did in that game against New England, that's a floor game. And then if he gets into the end zone once or twice, you're getting a ceiling game from Ezekiel Elliott. We could easily see him get into the end zone once, if not multiple times, against this Bills team that, like I said, does really struggle on the ground. They do have a pretty big run funnel defense, so I like this spot a lot for Ezekiel Elliott. On Thanksgiving Day, I expect them to feed him, so he's a guy that I'm going to be going to quite a bit on both sides. Alvin Kamara, I obviously like a ton as well, and I feel like a lot of my builds are probably going to start with Kamara and Elliott. I have a feeling I'm probably going to be jamming in the expensive running backs rather than going to the expensive receivers. It's pretty easy to get Elliott and Kamara on Yahoo. I mean, you have Elliott at 30, Kamara at 29. When you just look at the receiver pricing, Michael Thomas is priced all the way up to $38. So it's a little bit different on Yahoo. I mean, Kamara and Elliott clearly stand out to me above the rest. Obviously, Michael Thomas is a good play, but it's not like he's similarly priced to those guys. I mean, those guys are $9 cheaper, $8 cheaper. So I'm going to be starting a lot of my builds on Yahoo with Kamara and Elliott and then just kind of figuring out the rest. I'll for sure be doing the same on Draftkings as well. I mean, I like this spot a lot for Alvin Kamara. This Falcons team is a team you can still target with pass-catching running backs. We saw Kamara get 8 catches, 50 yards in Week 10 against the Falcons. He wasn't very efficient on the ground. He only got 4 carries in that game, but obviously you expect him to get more carries than that. He was still used heavily in the passing game. He's gotten at least 8 targets in 4 straight games. Honestly, might even be more than that. Yeah, 8 targets in 4 straight games. We know he's going to be targeted a ton. Since coming back from injury, he's got 10, 10, and 9 targets. I mean, with DraftKings full PPR scoring, Alvin Kamara is a great play. I like him a lot here. I'm going to be jamming him in with Ezekiel Elliott and then just kind of figuring out the rest. It's definitely going to be hard to get like Elliott, Kamara, and Michael Thomas. You're going to have to sacrifice probably one of those 3 guys. I don't think you're going to be able to get all 3 unless you're just like really punting off the rest of your lineup and playing. You're probably going to have to play Trubisky at quarterback. You're probably going to have to play 2 very cheap receivers. I mean, it can be done, but I don't know if you're really going to like the rest of your lineup. So between Thomas, Elliott, and Kamara, when you factor in salary and position as well, like the running back position is pretty gross besides Kamara and Elliott. There's not much I like under them. Like, I don't really see myself playing a ton of Devin Singletary. Devontae Freeman, someone we'll talk about on Yahoo, where he's really, really cheap. I think he could be playable. But there's no great value running backs I see, whereas there's actually some good value receivers. Like, you got some cheap guys under 5K that we'll talk about when we get to receiver. So between Elliott, Kamara, and Thomas, honestly, I'm just going to probably pay up for the 2 expensive running backs and then just kind of figure out the rest from there. So obviously, Kamara and Elliott are great plays this week. Devontae Freeman's someone I want to talk about on Yahoo. So if we go over here, he's at only $14. He's the same price as Frank Gore. I think Devontae Freeman is going to be a core play for me on Yahoo, assuming he plays. That is news we're going to have to wait and see on heading into Thursday. As I'm recording this video on Tuesday afternoon, we don't know yet if Freeman is going to play on Thursday. He was limited on Monday. He hasn't played just the last 2 games. I think it's pretty likely that he's able to play this week. It's not that great of a matchup. I mean, the Saints are a team that's really tough to run on. We saw Devontae Freeman go for 6.3 fantasy points against them when they played. I believe that was Week 10 maybe, if I'm not mistaken. He had 10 carries for 38 yards. Also had 3 catches for 10 yards. Pretty mediocre game from Devontae Freeman, but he's really dirt cheap on Yahoo at $14. We know he's going to be the lead back if he is fully healthy. He's going to get a lot of work in the passing game, especially if Austin Hooper misses. That's going to open up more targets for a guy like Devontae Freeman. So I like him a lot on Yahoo at $14 as a flex play if he's able to play this week. He's really cheap over there. He's an option on DraftKings as well at $5,100, but not going to be as core, or not going to be a core play for me over there, even if he does play. I mean, Tariq Cohen for 5K could be interesting here against the Lions. He gets a lot of work in the passing game, which is very valuable on DraftKings with the full PPR scoring. Honestly, I'd probably play him over Devontae Freeman just because we know Tariq Cohen's fully healthy right now. He's going to get probably anywhere from 7 to 8 targets, 7 to 9 targets, somewhere in that range. I mean, he's not going to get a ton of work in the running game, but he's going to be their pass down back. He did score when they played the Lions back in Week 10, had 3 carries for 14 yards, also got 4 catches for 23 yards, did have a receiving touchdown in that game. I like Tariq Cohen as a value. He's not going to be a core play for me by any means. I don't think really any players in that Bears-Lions game, maybe besides the defenses, are going to be core plays. So it's hard for me to have a ton of confidence in Tariq Cohen, but he's definitely a viable option. Bo Scarborough's been getting a lot of work lately, but with DraftKings like full PPR scoring, I want to target running backs that I know can at least catch a couple balls, and Bo Scarborough's just not being used in the passing game. Doesn't really get a ton of targets. I mean, just looking at the 2 games he's played this season, the last 2 weeks, he's got 14 and 18 carries, only 1 target in those games. I mean, Scarborough, if he's not getting a rushing touchdown, he's going to be really hard to trust, even at 4,700. Like, you're going to need him to go for over 100 yards if he's not scoring at least 1 touchdown. So I don't really have a ton of confidence in him either. I'd probably just rather play Cohen or Freeman, who we know are at least going to get work in the passing game. But that's just kind of where I'm looking to at running back. Mainly just going to be jamming in Elliott and Kamara in here and then just figuring out the rest of my lineup, probably going cheap at receiver. So now talking about some of the cheap receivers we have. Before we do get to the cheap receivers, obviously we need to touch on the expensive guys. So This is a great spot for Michael Thomas. He's an awesome play this week. It's just when you're constructing your lineup, you're going to have to make some sacrifices, like just plugging in Breeze, Elliott, Kamara, and Thomas. That's going to leave you 37-20 remaining per player. So you're going to have to punt defense. You're going to have to punt tight end. You're probably going to have to play 2 really cheap receivers. I mean, you can do it, but if I can only pick 2 of those 3 studs, like I've said multiple times, I think I'm going to side with the running backs, just given how weak the running back position is. Thomas is a great play, though. I'm going to have exposure to him. He's going to be in some of my lineups, but if I'm only making one lineup, honestly, I might side with Kamara and Elliott over Michael Thomas this week. But it's a great spot for Michael Thomas. Now, Julio Jones is someone I'm pretty interested in, especially if Marshawn Lattimore does not play this week. Marshawn Lattimore did not play last week against the Panthers, and we saw DJ Moore have a monster game against them. I would imagine that if Marshawn Lattimore plays, he's going to shadow Julio Jones, and Lattimore's been a pretty solid corner this season. Julio Jones, I think, is one of the more matchup-proof corners, though, in the league, or receivers in the league. Doesn't really matter who's across from him. He's going to find ways to get open. But if Lattimore is out, I mean, that makes Julio very appealing. I don't know who they would put across from him, but it would probably be a pretty easy matchup for Julio if Lattimore sits. And he's also $1,800 cheaper than Michael Thomas. So that's just some news I'm going to be keeping my eye on heading into Thursday. Allen Robinson is $6,700 on DraftKings. I don't think it's going to be a core play for me. I do want to talk about him over on Yahoo, though. He is really cheap over on Yahoo. So is Calvin Ridley. I mean, aside from Thomas and Julio at 31 and 38, you got some underpriced guys like Kenny Galladay's only 21, John Brown's only 21. You got Ridley at 20, Allen Robinson only $19. I said I wasn't going to have a ton of core plays in this Chicago-Detroit game, but Allen Robinson at $19 on Yahoo is going to be a core play for me. He's really hard to get away from at that salary. Even with Trubisky really struggling this season, not having that great of a year, especially for fantasy, we've still seen Allen Robinson put up big numbers. He had 6 catches, 131 yards, and a touchdown last week against the Giants. When he played the Lions earlier this season, back in Week 10, I believe, he had 6 catches for 86 yards in that game. He got 9 targets. I mean, he's going to be a target monster. He's going to get anywhere from like 7 to 9 targets every week, if not more. In this matchup against the Lions, I think he can have some success. So I like Allen Robinson factoring in his Yahoo salary at $19. He's going to be a top play for me over there. He's in play on DraftKings at $6,700, but not going to be a core play by any means. Calvin Ridley at $6,600, I also have a lot of interest in. I like him a lot on Yahoo, where his price is only $20. He's definitely in play over there if you want to go to him, especially like if Julio winds up sitting. I mean, it's not confirmed yet that Julio's going to play this week. I imagine he will, but if Julio's out, obviously Calvin Ridley would become a top option and would see a ton of volume against this Saints team. But then you got like John Brown, Kenny Galladay, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup. I mean, Amari Cooper is someone that stands out given his price tag. It's an incredibly tough matchup for him. He's probably going to be shadowed by Tre'Davious White, who is one of the better corners in the league. We saw him have a really tough matchup against New England. He was shadowed by Gilmore in that game. Gilmore followed him around pretty much everywhere he went. He only had 2 targets in that game, did not catch a single pass. He put up a donut. I don't expect another 0 from Amari Cooper, but it would be very surprising if he puts up a ceiling game against Tre'Davious White with how good he's been. Honestly, with White shadowing Cooper, that could open up more targets for guys like Michael Gallup, who's cheap at $5,500, Randall Cobb, who's cheap at $5K. Randall Cobb's someone I want to talk about on Yahoo. So he's really cheap at $14. We're going to talk about Cole Beasley in a second, who's also really cheap at $14 or at $13. But Cobb, though, at $14, I like quite a bit. He's been getting very consistent targets lately. 8, 8, 7, and 7 targets just the last 4 games. Assuming White shadows Cooper, I think we could see Cobb get a few more targets as well, get open, and maybe find a way to put up a big game. Only $14 on Yahoo. I do like him quite a bit, given that salary. I feel like I'm probably not going to be paying up much at receiver on Yahoo just because you have so many guys like in this low 20s, high teens range, like Cobb, Robinson, Jones, Calvin Ridley, Brown. Like these guys all feel a little bit too cheap, which is probably not going to allow me to pay up for Michael Thomas, but definitely like Cobb as a cheap value on Yahoo. He's in play on DraftKings as well at $5K. He's probably one of the better value receivers. I do want to talk about Cole Beasley, though. I like Cole Beasley a lot as a value receiver this week. So he's $4,700. He's been getting consistent volume recently. Just the last few weeks, he's gotten 6, 4, 9 targets. For those of you that factor into the narratives, this is a revenge game for Cole Beasley, facing his old team, the Cowboys, going back to Jerry World to face them. He's been playing a lot of snaps as well, which is something that's very encouraging. If we just look at snap percentage the last few weeks, Cole Beasley, 81% of the snaps just the last 2 weeks. They've been using him a lot. They've been targeting him quite a bit as well. I think he is firmly in play as a value receiver at 4,700. I think Randall Cobb is another guy you could plug in as well at 5K. Marvin Jones, 5,300, I like a lot as well. Another guy that just gets a ton of volume for 5,300. When he faced the Bears in Week 10, he had 5 catches, 77 yards, 12 Draftkings points in that game. I mean, I feel probably a little bit safer with Marvin Jones' like target projection, and honestly, I'd probably take him over Randall Cobb for 5,300 over 5K. But all these guys like Cobb, Jones, Beasley, even Michael Gallup, I mean, this is where I really like to go at receiver this week rather than just jamming in the expensive receivers. I'm probably going to be paying up at running back and then going to a lot of these receiver value plays. Even a guy like Russell Gage, 4,500, has been seeing pretty nice volume recently. He got 10 targets in that game against Tampa Bay, 8 catches, 76 yards. If Julio were to miss this game, that would obviously make Russell Gage a much more appealing play that's going to open up more targets. So he's someone I have my eye on as a value receiver. Taylor Gabriel's going to be an interesting injury to watch heading into Thursday. He did not participate in Monday's practice or their estimated practice due to a concussion. If he were to sit this game, that could honestly open up more targets for someone like Anthony Miller or Javon Wims, who could potentially play more. Gabriel did get 14 targets Week 11 against the Rams. His targets have been very up and down this season. We've seen some games where he gets 6, 7, 8 targets, 14 targets, and then next week he got 3 targets. So he's obviously hard to trust, but I know Javon Wims is really cheap. I mean, he's the stone minimum 3K. He would definitely be a viable cheap receiver if Taylor Gabriel doesn't sit. Anthony Miller's really cheap at 3,900. He could potentially see some more volume. I mean, he's been getting pretty consistent volume just the last few weeks. 11 targets, 9 targets, 11, 13 DraftKings points. He's only 3,900 on DraftKings. If you're wanting to go with like the full jam in all the expensive running backs and receivers, if you want to jam in Elliott, Kamara, and Michael Thomas, someone like Anthony Miller could make that possible at 3,900. So I could see going to him if you're trying to go with all those expensive studs. He's probably the best value receiver, like under 4K. He stands out the most at 3,900. But let's go ahead and run through the tight end position real quick, and then we'll move over to defense before we end the video. So just looking at tight end, I mean, it's pretty gross. There's really only a few playable tight ends that you feel confident in. So Austin Hooper's obviously the number 1 tight end on this slate, but we're going to need to watch his status heading into Thursday. He hasn't played the last few games. He's questionable. Honestly, I don't feel like he's going to play this game, so that's probably going to open up maybe someone like Jaden Graham for 3,100, who is dirt cheap. He did get a long 53-yard catch, but that was really all he did last week against the Buccaneers. I mean, Jared Cook is by far the best tight end, assuming that Austin Hooper does not play. 4,800, I mean, you kind of just have to play Jared Cook just because you don't feel really confident in any other tight ends. Cook's actually been getting a pretty good amount of volume recently as well. I mean, some weeks he's gotten 2, 3 targets. Next week he got 10 targets against the Falcons. He got 8 targets against the Panthers. He went for 6 catches and 74 yards on 10 targets when he did play the Falcons back in Week 10. So Jared Cook's the top tight end. If you're wanting to jam in all the expensive running backs and receivers, though, I mean, you're going to have to probably punt tight end as well. There are some viable punts. I think Dawson Knox makes a lot of sense as just a cheap punt tight end for 2,900. Kind of just hoping he gets you anywhere from like 8 to 10 DraftKings points. I mean, if Jared Cook goes for like 25 DK points, it's gonna be hard to win without him. Like, you're gonna need Jared Cook to cash in any turn or in any contest because he's gonna be so popular. But if Jared Cook just puts up like 10 points, you could probably make that up from some of the other tight ends. Dawson Knox, I could see putting up 8 to 10 DraftKings points here. He's been playing a good amount of snaps recently. We'll look at the tight end snap percentage from the Bills the last few weeks. So he played 78% of the snaps in Week 12, 71% in Week 11. I mean, he's clearly their tight end number 1 over, I can't even remember who the backup is, over Luke Stocker, I believe, or not even Luke Stocker. I can't even remember who's the Bills' backup tight end. Tyler Kroft, that's it. I don't know why I said Luke Stocker. Luke Stocker's the backup for the Falcons. So he's been clearly playing over Tyler Kroft, even with Kroft healthy. At the beginning of the season, we were seeing Kroft be the number 1 tight end. Then Dawson Knox kind of took over that role. At 2,900, if I'm going to punt tight end, I'm probably going to go to him at 2,900 or maybe Jason Witten at 3,300, just because we know these guys are going to be on the field for 75, 80% of the snaps. They at least have the potential to maybe score a touchdown, potentially get close to what Jared Cook is going to put up. If Jared Cook, like I said, if he puts up 20, I mean, it's going to be hard to win without Jared Cook, at least like take down a tournament. But if Jared Cook puts up 10 DraftKings points and you get 7 from Knox or you get 8 from Jason Witten, those guys could honestly be the better play. And we could see those guys in the winning lineup. So obviously, if you can fit Jared Cook, he's the best tight end play. But I'm totally fine just punting the position and hope Jared Cook doesn't burn you and hope he doesn't put up a big game. Just punting the position with someone like Witten, Graham, or Dawson Knox, all really, really cheap. But let's go ahead and run through defense real quick before we end the video. I didn't talk about tight end on Yahoo, but it's probably the same over here. I mean, you got Cook at 18, then you have Knox at 12, Witten at 11. You do have TJ Hawkinson for minimum salary. Even though Hawkinson hasn't been good this season, just as of late, he has not looked that great. He hasn't been targeted much. He's still minimum salary, so I could see using him as a punt tight end. I mean, I'm probably going to try and jam in Jared Cook as much as I can at $18, but if you need to punt off the position, you got Knox at 12 and Witten at 11, who would both be viable as just cheap punt plays, hoping that Cook doesn't burn you. But now running to defense real quick and just looking at this position, I have a feeling a lot of my defense exposure is going to come from the Bears and Lions game. You got the Bears D for $2,500. You got the Lions for $2,700. It's going to be a low-scoring game. You're probably going to see a lot of turnovers in that game, especially if Jeff Driscoll does not wind up playing. I mean, the Bears defense would probably become the best defense play at $2,500, but I like the Bears and Lions the most, especially the Lions on Yahoo. The Lions are only $11. They're the second cheapest defense behind the Falcons. So the Lions are probably going to be my most exposed defense on Yahoo. I like both the Lions I like the Lions on both sides. I like the Bears as well. I think the Cowboys make plenty of sense at home against the Bills. We know Josh Allen will definitely take some sacks. He'll turn the ball over. Cowboys playing at home. You could definitely target them on Yahoo as well for $14, but it's a 3-game slate. I don't think there's really any defenses that just stand out above the rest, so I'm probably just going to have a lot of exposure to all different defenses. Just kind of play whatever defense fits into my lineup. I don't see myself really paying up for the Saints much, but I'm fine paying up for the Bears at 16. I like the Cowboys at 14, the Bills at 13. I mean, probably the Bears, Cowboys, Bills, and Lions. Those 4 defenses are probably going to be the defenses I play the most. I don't see myself really playing or having much exposure to the defenses in that late night game. So that's just kind of where I'm looking to for defense this week, guys. I think that's pretty much it for the video. Hopefully, you guys did enjoy this video. Hopefully, it did help you. If you enjoyed, make sure you drop a like down below. As always, I would greatly appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. Click that notification bell so that way you get notified every time I upload. You can also follow me on Twitter. Link is down in the description. I would appreciate if you guys would give me a follow over on Twitter. I'm very active over there at DFS by Noah. But good luck this week on this Thanksgiving Day slate. Have a good Thanksgiving. Enjoy the time with your family. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.